in general, most of us have started to think, at least in our early years, that science has figured out everything. Science has all the answers, right? But as I got more into it, as you will see, science explains how nature behaves, but it does not tell us what nature is. So that is the mistake most of us make, because science has provided us with all these gadgets and gizmos, even Zoom and everything that is made possible by science. And that operates on the principle of how nature behaves. People have figured out over centuries, and that is the product of that. But it does not tell us what is behind this. What is the underlying reality of nature. Sister was asking me, what is quantum physics? It's hard to explain, but I just want to give a simple explanation, right? I have a pair of dice in my hand, and if I roll a dice, and for example, I get 6 on this, and then I roll the second dice, what are the chances that the second one will also give us a number 6? And in the classical world in which we operate, it is very, statistically, it is minuscule, right? We can calculate, we can throw it 1,000 times and then calculate. But in the quantum world, there's a phenomenon called entanglement, where if you think of a quantum dice, in the quantum world, they use photons and other small entities. But it is 100% of the time they are correlated. If one photon or one dice shows number 6, the other dice will also say show the same phase 100% of the time, which is unbelievable, right? Because we operate in the classical world of tables and chairs. In that world in which we exist, this is impossible. And not only that, they are correlated 100% of the time, but they are correlated non-locally, means whether you do it here or you do throw the other dice, quantum dice, so-called quantum dice, in the other room, another building, or in the other end of the universe, they are always correlated. So that's one of the phenomena of quantum physics that I will show and try to correlate to what we practice as we go along. So that's the name, how quantum physics meets meditation. Go to the next slide. So I mentioned the word reality, right? So I just wanted to define a few terms before we really go into this. What is objective reality? Is the idea that something exists independent of observation. So, these things, tables and chairs exist whether we are looking at it or not. Whether we are, on the other room, we still think these things exist here. So that's called objective reality. According to science, objective reality is something that can be measured. We have all these instruments. We can measure its length and width of an object. For example, a dice I was holding, you can measure it. We can see the color and so on. So that we think of normally as objective reality. So that is common language. Objective reality is something that exists outside of our mind. We are thinking all these things out there. They are outside of our mind. So that we think of as normally as objective reality. Next one. So using common language, when we think of real things have objective existence, they exist even, as I said, we are not looking at it. And another most important thing is we all agree on its shape, color, and size. We all see this is a white with black dots. So this is the kind of an objective reality according to classical physics. Next one. So, but over the years, the discoveries in quantum physics have thrown into question what we normally think of as objective reality. And over the last 2 decades, you might have seen headlines like this: quantum physics questions say goodbye to reality as we normally think of. Should quantum anomalies make us rethink reality? Objective reality may not exist at all as we are normally used to thinking. So what are these headlines? These are headlines are taken from leading scientific journals and popular magazines. And most people still don't pay attention to this, right? Even the scientists, who have discovered these things, they have not come to terms, what is the underlying philosophy behind it. They have done all the experiments, but they still continue to deny what I'm trying to propose here. So in order to fully understand this, there's a kind of a foundational experiment that was done maybe over 100 years ago. That's called the double slit experiment. So it's a little bit hard for me to explain. So what I'm going to do is we're going to play a small video, 5-minute video. That really, it's like a cartoon video. So even if you don't have a background, you will understand, what is this. So that started this whole phenomenon of quantum weirdness in quantum mechanics. Was originated from that what is called as a double slit experiment, and the results were counterintuitive to how we think of nature behaves. So we started from that. So maybe. Yeah.
I didn't hear the word after double. Double what?
Slit.
Slit, double slit.
Click.
Slit, SLIT, slit.
Okay,
The two slits and you project.
Yeah, you will see that.
You'll see that here.
Yeah, can you play that?
Yeah. You mean this microphone also slides? Keep it here.
You need a check, brother.
No, I'm good.
How about you?
No, I'm good. We'll play this and then we'll.
If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So when we throw things, that is matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, Maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
The other one. So the double slit experiment, I don't know, most of you probably got something out of it, right? So when you observe the electrons, or when you detect them, detecting means somebody is, looking at the results. So observing, they go back behaving like little marbles. Whereas if nobody is observing them, it behaves like a wave, showing that interference pattern. So this has befuddled the scientists for over a century. They have various kinds of explanation, Copenhagen interpretation, and this and that, so on. But still, there is no, a theory that everybody universally, agrees on. So that is still. So to kind of sum this up, according to quantum physics, we all study the structure of atoms in schools and high schools and colleges and so on, right? We know that it has a nucleus and then it has electrons going around in orbitals and so on. So this is kind of a simplistic model that we all learned. And we all thought that that's how actually they exist in reality. But according to quantum physics, particles does not have any real existence until they are observed, just like we saw in that experiment. And then, so something comes into existence when you see it, but does not exist when you are not seeing it. So that is, and these are the conclusions of quantum physics. There is no dispute in whatever I'm saying. These have been proven over and over with sophisticated experiments over and over again. And then, so in general, physical systems do not have definite properties until they are measured. So that is the difference between quantum level, the minute level where we are, that's what quantum signifies. Whereas in the classical world, we can, as I said earlier, we all see it, same thing, and we all agree on this thing, and it is there whether we are seeing it or not. But in the quantum world, things don't exist until they are detected or measured. So until then, they exist in some kind of an abstract, what they call a superposition, and it has not taken a definite, position or property or mass or charge, anything, until it is measured.
It can exist as waves or particles. It
Yes.
can go back and forth between the two
Right.
kinds of existence.
So scientists are beginning to kind of, trying to understand this phenomenon, duality of waves and particles. And then, these conclusions, unlike the conclusions in the previous slide, these conclusions are not universally accepted. They are beginning to think like that, some leading scientists. Consciousness, or what is fundamental reality? So some science, physicists and philosophers are now beginning to say reality is something that involves our consciousness. Just like in that experiment, when you see it, it collapses into a particle. So before seeing it, so in general, even when we are seeing these things, we think they are outside. People, places, tables, and chairs are seemingly outside. That's a common intuition that we get. But according to researchers, reality is something that involves our consciousness. Consciousness is what makes, reality, the outside world possible. So the outside world cannot exist independent of consciousness. So we think it is out there, whether we are seeing it or not. That's not how it works. The science is saying what Indian philosophy and sages have said for millennia. Reality is something that is based on an interaction of consciousness and whatever stuff is outside that. Without consciousness, so consciousness is not an emergent property of matter. So what we have learned in schools and colleges, we think brain produces consciousness, right? That's how we are used to thinking. But now philosophers are saying consciousness is fundamental. So consciousness, when it is filtered through our sensory organs, it produces this perception, what we see, when we touch something, we feel something. Because consciousness is, what helps seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, everything, the underlying basis is consciousness. Without consciousness, none of them, none of the sensory organs will work. So that's what they're saying. Consciousness is the foundational principle of the universe. And observers bring universe into existence. So without conscious beings, the universe as we see it does not exist. And some early pioneers of quantum physics had this clue. For example, Max Planck said, I regard consciousness as fundamental and matter is derived from consciousness. So matter as we think of, independent of consciousness does not exist. We feel the perception using our consciousness.
Brother, I have a question.
Yes.
So when you say consciousness, like I have some consciousness, right? You have one consciousness. Is it this
Yeah,
individual?
I'm coming into that. That's a valid question most people have. So to understand the question that you just raised, to understand this analogy helped me. There's an analogy in our Upanishads. They talk about dream. So in the dream world, we all have dreams, right? When we go to sleep, at some stage, we will have dreams. In the dream world, our own individual mind creates an external world of similar to what, what we are experiencing. But in the dream world, we have people, we have places, buildings, chairs, tables, everything exists seemingly outside of the dreamer. And how does this happen? How does dream happen? Dream is always something that we observe. Without our observation, even in sleep, we are observing. By observing, we are creating the dream world. So the analogy is, if our single individual mind can create, multiplicity and diversity of objects, places, people, animals, everything, the analogy is, this is the so-called waking world, what we think of as more real than the dream world, could be, a God's dream, So the only difference here is our, dream world is private. We only experience the dream. We can't share it with everybody else. Whereas God's dream, or the universal dream, is public. We are all sharing the same dream, so-called same dream. To answer your question, there is only one consciousness. We're all sharing that consciousness. And we all see the same thing, not because things are out there, independent of us. We all see the same thing because we are sharing that one consciousness. So, and that's how, we all can exist and operate in this world because we all agree on some things. There's a bus there, you can't go in front of the bus. We all follow certain logic and reasoning, to exist in the world. And, because we share the same consciousness, and when it filtered through our, sensory organs, we experience the reality as we normally think of reality. We think this is more real than the dream world. But in the dream, when you're dreaming, it feels as real as this world, as the so-called waking world, right? Until we wake up from that dream. So, yes.
So consciousness is the same, but the experience is different.
Yes, yeah. I mean, even though we all agree on the same thing, but our thoughts and emotions are different, right? So, yes, so even though it is filtered to the organs, we all have our impressions that we learn in the system. So it influences how we think of the external world, even though we are seeing the same world, but people differ in how we think,
Is it even the consciousness same and the table is same, but the perceptions are different, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what the each object, different people see it and explain.
Yeah.
They differ.
Yeah. So in the same way,
You,
another example to answer where you're going, the animals also share the same consciousness,
correct.
but they have a different, type of sensory system and organs. So they experience differently. They may not see the same colors. Different animals have different, types of nervous system and so on. So in the same way, most of the humans see the same thing, but with some variations here and there because of whatever conditions they may have or other impressions. But generally, humans agree on the same color, and unless we have color blindness, then you can see some colors and so on. But in general, we agree on what we are seeing. Yes.
Can we say, I mean, my understanding is we already programmed. Our mind is programmed to see this is a coffee table,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that's why we all agree this is coffee table.
Yes.
So that concept
Mhm.
has been programmed.
It is programmed through our upbringing. When we come into this world, we don't know this is a table, but we are told, okay, you call this a table, you call this a chair, you call this animal. We learn through memory and experience.
It's all our creation.
Yes. So
Then it cannot be our creation because whether we have the program.
Identification, that's it. Something we have to give to differentiate between this and that.
Yeah.
We have to give some
Some name.
identification, name.
Yeah, name and forms.
Because for the dog, it is not a table. It is
Yeah.
something to play with, that's it.
Okay, go to the next one. So So there is evidence that other pioneers of quantum physics like Heisenberg, most of you have heard of Heisenberg principle and so on. So they were befuddled by what they were observing, these weird phenomenon of quantum physics. Why these the subatomic particles don't behave the same as in the classical world, and because it was counterintuitive, and after they were exposed to the Indian philosophy, it started to kind of make sense to them. So this is what the first example I gave using the dice. In quantum physics, entangled particles, these are normally, these experiments are carried out using photons. You can take a photon and split it into two by passing through a crystal, and then you can send them out separate ways, and then you measure one proton, the spin of one proton, and then you can correlate 100% of the time. The spin of the other proton will be opposite, even though they are separated by vast distances. So you can measure this one first, and then send this other photon along its way for miles or kilometers. And if you have a detector that is able to detect that, after several minutes, it will be exactly the opposite. So that's why the terminology in quantum physics is called non-local. Now, normally you think, if two objects have to act in a way that is correlated, you would think that they are somehow connected, right? So even Einstein, when it was proposed, this quantum entanglement was proposed in the 1930s, when a lot of these pioneers were discovering these things and proposing these hypotheses. And entanglement was proposed at the time, and Einstein, using his common intuition and logic, we think, it cannot be possible. There has to be something. He called it spooky action at a distance. So he didn't believe, but Einstein has been proven wrong on this topic by later, scientists and quantum physicists from the 1960s all the way to 2018, using sophisticated experiments. This has been proven beyond a shadow of doubt. In fact, the 2022 Nobel Prize was awarded for quantum entanglement by actually experimental proof. I think it may be in the next slide here. Yeah. So these three physicists actually got Aspect, Glauser, and Zeilinger. They got the Nobel Prize, 2022 Nobel Prize for showing that quantum entanglement is real. So, but
I think if I read this, it seems I read this article, something.
yeah,
It says that the universe doesn't even exist.
yeah, universe is not non-real and non-local. So exists in the sense, so the universe doesn't exist in the sense that we think it does. So that is what quantum physicists are saying. And it is non-local. We think it has to be local. Unless you touch something, it doesn't move. But quantum entanglement says two objects, subatomic particles can be connected that are not local. And as you said, it is not. They think it is not real because unless we observe it, the universe doesn't come into existence.
That is actually a common sense. Suppose you are standing there.
Yes.
The moment I close my eyes, you are not there.
Yes. Exactly.
Right? To prove that, either I have to use some other sense that I have to touch,
Right.
or some I have to hear something. If all those are even gone, even though I am still alive, but the whole universe is gone for me.
Yeah. In fact, there is a saying. In fact, I've heard Anton Zeilinger say in one of his talks that the moon does not exist unless you're looking at it.
Yeah.
So the same way, none of these exists until we look at it, right? As you said, we close our eyes, at least one of the sensory organs is turned off and you don't experience the same external worlds. Yes,
Is photographic universe talking about this matter?
yes. Yeah, it can be, we can think of as, some physicists or philosophers have suggested that this thing is what we are experiencing is a hologram and we are inside the hologram. So there's a book titled Holographic Universe. Yeah. Okay, excellent. So quantum physics and consciousness. So to bring it all together, renowned quantum physicist John Hagelin, he has proposed this hypothesis to explain this unified field of pure consciousness. How is that a single unified field, but we experience this universe in terms of layers. He has put this in terms of classical physics, quantum physics, and all the way down to quantum field theory. So at the core, it is a single field, but it's a kind of a dynamic field. So it is not inert, but it's a dynamic field, and that is capable of creating this entire universe. So that is what he's proposing, and he's relating this to what we experience in kind of now bringing meditation into this. So how are these things related, right? That's what we are here to kind of talk about, right? So normally in the waking hours, we are looking outside, right? We are focusing on objects. You're now looking at me, talking, and we are all sitting here having this common experience. But meditation, as we all know, is a way to, when we start meditating, we close our eyes, we try to shut off, ignore the sounds. So when we do that, we draw our attention to its source. That's the object of our meditation. Even though we start with the divine light, and slowly at some point we get absorbed in the pure consciousness or pure awareness. So by quieting our mind, that's what we do in meditation. And this pure consciousness, that is the source of all thoughts, source of all emotions. So what John Hagelin, a quantum physicist and also a transcendental meditation teacher and a practitioner for decades, according to him, he's saying this is the same as this. So ultimately, we during meditation, we can experience this field or the pure source of everything. We have the ability to tap into that field, that creative and dynamic field that has created this entire universe. We have access to it, and that's why we do meditation. But unfortunately, most people in this world go through life without this knowledge. And this talk is an attempt to kind of connect these two fields. Even though they are coming from different angles, they are trying to say the same thing. And this is what our sages and philosophers have said. Consciousness is universal, and that is the creative force, that is the creative intelligence that create this world, operates this world, helps operate our physical body, our senses. So everything, is this, and most of us are not aware of it. So that's the connection between these two fields that I want to kind of further elucidate and leave you with.
So can we say that this is the source when you said the pure consciousness,
Yeah.
unified field. If I say this is nothingness, but everything came from the nothing.
Yeah.
And we are here through meditation, we are trying to reach that nothingness. There, the moment we reach there, that is called realization. So then I come to know everything.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
which otherwise not possible throughout one life, I may get into one subject throughout the life and one Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
But if we go there, I'm tapped to the whole thing.
Yeah. I think one of our Upanishads says, what is that by knowing one thing that you know everything, right?
Yeah.
So
Brahman,
exactly.
whatever you call it, Brahman, nothingness is a different names.
Yeah.
So unified field, so all same thing.
So that's as you said.
Or God,
Yeah.
God consciousness.
Different names.
So we all have different names, different traditions have different names. Ultimately, they are pointing to that entity.
The valid point you mentioned is many people doesn't understand or doesn't have the knowledge you said.
Right.
But even if they come across like that, many people try to attract it or just let
Yes.
it go through.
Right.
Don't even consider it.
Right.
So, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Thank you.
Just
May I ask you?
yeah, please.
My knowledge about quantum physics and physics
Yeah.
is zero.
Hold
No.
so that everybody can hear.
Yeah.
So I told you what after your explanation, I thought this is what we see, that Maya.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are programmed to see it as Maya. I mean,
Yeah.
as a reality, but it's not real. Even if my mom taught me this is the coffee table, it doesn't, because she's also was planned or designed to see it as
Yeah.
so. The only thing that through meditation we can connect with that pure field,
Right.
And this is we go beyond the Maya. I mean,
Right.
we turn and go to. I mean, does it make any sense or?
No. Yeah, I think you are on the right track. That's exactly
Really?
what we are doing.
That's why, Baba says, you look at the world as a wonder, not the intellect, not using the intellect.
Yes.
Because the kid, your 4 or 5 months old kid, what she or he does, they just wonder everything.
Yes.
They don't know anything. It is stable, they don't know what is stable. But this human being, he has 2 hands, that's it. They wonder. So that's why we call them God, because they're so innocent and they don't know.
That's why I've seen many spiritual teachers tell us that when we bring up kids, don't tell them don't tell them that this is a tree. They say this is called a tree. It is different from saying this is a tree. So we then if we don't give them, you call a tree, then they can explore. If you say this is a tree, they know it's a tree, and then they move on to something else. So
they block there.
Yeah, exactly.
Go,
So you need to enhance their curiosity.
Correct.
By saying it properly. For any object they want to explore, especially in nature, we should let them explore it. Without conditioning them by giving them suggestions. Yeah.
I came to sit next to her because my level might be even lower than her. So please excuse me if this is a dumb question. And by seeing this, maybe my answer is getting clearer to me. And I don't know if I'll ask the question the correct way, but so what I'm understanding, there is consciousness and pure. So is this what is higher consciousness also?
Yeah.
So I assume that triangle would be inverted.
Yeah. So this is the conscious mind is what we are now aware of, right? What we are experiencing now is the conscious mind. Okay. Conscious mind is useful for interacting with the world, learning, studying, and all these things. But the thing is, most of the time, our consciousness is directed towards the external objects. You have to pay attention to your kid, that it is useful. But most people are just lost in that. And we begin to think, as we will see in the next few slides, we begin to think we are our thoughts and emotions. We don't even realize that pure consciousness that you just said, we have that. We all have that. So exactly right. So when we quieten our mind, and it slowly and slowly with practice, we can begin to experience this. This is the peace and stability that we experience through meditation, that pure consciousness.
My question, it should be the top, it's showing at the bottom. It's just a labeling thing.
Yeah.
A small follow-up question.
Yes.
Is meditation the only way to reach there? To expand our consciousness?
Meditation is the way that is accessible for most people.
Right.
You can, do it by Jnana Yoga, by studying scriptures and texts and Bhakti Yoga. But from our teachings, we know that that can take a long period, long time.
Right.
And make it our lifetime. But meditation or Raja Yoga is known to kind of, leapfrog. Yeah. So that.
Thank you.
It's like this, you want to go to the Delhi, there are many ways to go. You can walk, you can take flight.
Make
So here what it says is that this is the fastest way, but
Yeah.
it's a vehicle. The meditation is a vehicle to reach there.
Right. Here, I'm just listing some of these scientists, that I follow. There are many leading scientists who are, beginning to think, along these lines. In fact, some of them, Bernard or Castro, they have come to this, directly from a scientific background. They had no interest or, in spirituality before realizing. In fact, Bernardo Castro proposes what is known as analytical idealism. That there is universal consciousness or, one mind. He uses the term mind. And he is a hardcore scientist, until he got in, he got tired of that. He was in CERN, in particle physics lab in Europe. And he's a successful scientist and philosopher now. He got a degree both in philosophy and and computer engineering. And Donald Hoffman is also a professor in California, cognitive science. He's proposing theories that are somewhat similar to what we are saying. Ultimately, what they are saying is, what we see here is like a desktop interface, right? That's what both of them have similar kind of analogies. For example, we don't know how to operate the computers. If you go to, at the core of the computer, we don't know. Most of us cannot figure out. Most of us cannot present this, if you have zeros and ones and all this solid state stuff inside the computer. But the interface helps us to do what we need to do. In the same way, this so-called external world is an interface to help us survive. That helps us to survive and progress. And we can do what we need to do because if we experience reality as it is, in fact, he uses the term, we will become an entropic soup. So our senses, our physical bodies are not equipped to handle reality as it is.
Yeah.
And I think Babuji has an analogy.
That also says that Babaji says that.
After 10.
Yeah.
Yes.
Babuji has said he progressed somebody to a higher point, and then
They will die. They can't afford it, cannot handle it.
this guy got a severe headache, and Babaji had to say, what are you doing? So it's some kind of analogy in our own tradition that, so it's almost like we are wearing a, these days we have a headset. So we experience this universe using that headset or a desktop interface. So we are not equipped to handle reality as it is. So, unless we realize slowly and progress, to a higher level. So just to finally, bring it all together in terms of, there are several questions on consciousness, right? I just want to explain now using common terminology and also concepts from our, Indian philosophical traditions. So, how to define consciousness? Consciousness is who we are. When I ask you the question, are you aware? Are we aware? And we can easily say we are, because that's what makes us, have this conversation. Me speaking, you're listening. So all these things are possible because of this awareness. So whatever we are experiencing, we are aware of it. So you can say, you are hearing my voice, but it's as good as saying you are aware of my voice.
But
Right?
not sure whether listening or not.
Yeah. So a movie screen analogy, also helps us to experience this awareness. So when we go to a movie, there's a background screen, right?
Yes,
But when we are fully immersed in the movie,
we don't see the
we forget the screen.
screen.
We are immersed in the story. We become part of the story, even though we are sitting with hundreds of people.
Yes.
We forget. So in the same way, we forget this background awareness that's always there. And when we get caught up with the story of life, most of us forget. So that is the so thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. So in the movie screen, pictures play, but in the screen of awareness, thoughts and emotions and perceptions, so they keep changing.
So, how we are evolved as far as the consciousness, or emotions, and you use another word, mind,
Yeah,
it's going to evolve as well.
right. The subtle body, evolves. So, but the background awareness is always unchanging, immutable, eternal,
So
and
this is causal body.
yeah,
Sorry.
Causal body.
Causal God.
causal body, yeah. In a way. So that is unchanging, The sense of I am is the same, when we were young, when we were teenagers. But our thoughts, and way we think of the world and everything has changed.
And because of
Our
the,
thoughts and intellect has changed. So those things
because
can,
of the consciousness.
but the consciousness itself, that does not change. Yes, that's what I'm trying to
I
say.
think the another way of saying is, thought is nothing but object plus consciousness. The moment if we remove the object, cannot exist, and that becomes consciousness.
Yeah,
So we are all in, as you said, no, that Maya is nothing but all that object.
activity of consciousness, you can call it. So, but the only thing is, most people have problems, meditation, starting meditation, staying with meditation, is because, we are used to knowing things. We know, if there is an object, we can see and know. But we cannot know awareness the same way we can know an object, because it has no qualities, no color, no shape. So that's why, yeah. So we cannot know awareness the same way we know an object. Even including thoughts and emotions, we can recognize. We can think of them as objects in consciousness. But the consciousness itself, we cannot know, but we can only be. We can only rest in consciousness or awareness. So when we go deep into meditation, that's what we are doing. We are resting in awareness when the mind has quietened down, the thoughts have subsided. So we don't need to do anything to experience this. We just need to practice and bring the activity of the mind to gradually, slower and slower, and ultimately, it should be effortless. That's why we say in Heartfulness, if you try hard, try to meditate, you will not be successful. You just have to let go. In Heartfulness, we have transmission to assist in, going deeper. So that is the another advantage in our system. But on our own, for most people, it is difficult to, gradually reduce and then stay in that state of awareness.
Actually, this brings to me the one one thing that, am I eligible for meditation? If I want to know, can I stay myself without looking at anything for a couple of hours? Without saying I'm bored, I don't know what to do, all these things without complaining. If I can stay myself, then I think I'm
Yeah.
eligible for.
Yeah, but most people have a hard time doing that.
Yeah.
Brother, I just forgive me, I'm
Yeah.
asking too many questions.
No.
Because I really enjoying this presentation. But my understanding from consciousness was consciousness evolve.
Yeah.
Okay, but you said consciousness, it does not.
Yeah, consciousness does not evolve. I think even our tradition says these subtle bodies, the intellect, the ego can get refined. And what's the other one?
Intelligent.
Yeah.
So those things can evolve.
Discrimination.
Exactly, but so those are not part of consciousness?
They are part of it.
So we are
Evolution.
evolving,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So they are in layers, right? You have these.
So you mean that they are exist? I am the one who's discovering it. It is what you mean it? Of course, the consciousness exists, but how I am connected with that, this is my growth.
Yeah, become aware of what you already have.
Okay.
So we all have awareness or consciousness. Most of the time we are not aware of the awareness. Meditation is, you can say, a way to become aware of the awareness or consciousness. Awareness is a kind of a common term for another term for consciousness. So we all have consciousness, as we said, that's our true nature. But most of the time we are focused on the external world. Meditation is a way to
It's
draw
covered
that.
with all the grossness and all the other things in the subtle body covers the consciousness. So we don't experience pure
So
consciousness.
we are just removing those
Yeah,
barriers.
Exactly. Experience pure
It
consciousness.
makes sense.
Cleaning in our system is a way to remove the impressions so that more and more the pure awareness, we can become exposed to and it can influence us.
But that's, okay, I understood that. But this unified field, which is the ultimate, right? When we meditate, we touch that, it depends. And that's why we are meditating. We don't remember where we were, but we always comparing my meditation. I didn't go there. So that is a very interesting. So this is quantum physics. Right? You cannot measure it. You cannot say where you were. Right.
Right.
Okay.
Non-local. When you go deep into meditation, sometimes when you get out of meditation, it has happened a few times. Most times it doesn't happen, right? Most of us it has happened. When you open your eyes, sometimes you forget where you were sitting. I was sitting in front of a preceptor once and I forgot. And I had to take a few seconds to kind of remember where I was.
Okay.
So that's kind of a non-local phenomenon, correlating with quantum physics.
Thank you.
The simplest example can be the sun is always there, but we can't see because of the clouds.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Like covering. So if we remove our conditioning, it is already there, as you said, awareness.
Yeah, that is very important. Because I thought our consciousness evolved, our discovery is evolved.
There is a question
not
from the Zoom.
Okay.
How is this related to the law of attraction in the material world? Law of attraction.
Yeah, I mean, law of attraction, yes, we can bring our intention, through the process of mind, using our mind, and we can hold that intention. That's the law of attraction. You want to make something happen in the physical world, we can, but it has to. Everything, all creation starts, in this field. The field of creativity. The universe started from this field. So if you want something good to happen or manifest something in this world, I think it is logical that you need to go there. Yes, you need to do stuff in the external world. I'm not saying just sitting and meditating will do, but if you have the intention to do something good, then it has happened, I'm sure it has happened to many of you. You will connect with people, who are thinking along the same lines. I wanted to start meditation group in, where I live in Clinton, New Jersey. And I was thinking how should I start? And then this yoga, there was a yoga studio I used to attend, and the owner said, "Oh, you want to start meditating? I know you are doing meditation. Do you want to teach meditation?" I'm sure, so many of you have experienced incidents like that. So you have the intention, and you bring that intention, but you work with that, the unified field and then bring it out into the world. And then that will help you manifest in the world. That's how I understand manifestation.
So you are the dust that is here.
Yeah.
And your intention is the other guys. So they have
Yes.
in quantum physics they matter. I'm sorry, I'm so dumb.
No.
But I mean, I want to know if I understood you. You have this sankalpa,
Yeah.
this intention, and it happens somewhere else,
Right.
right?
And then somebody else.
And
So it means the interconnected of all things,
Connections.
So that's what it shows.
that is,
Yeah.
okay.
So I think so that's kind of a background thing. Most of you are familiar with this. I'm not going to go through this entire, because this is what I normally give for for general audiences. This is what most of you have seen this. So I'm not going to go into that. But so this is where I kind of drop off quantum physics, and then heartfulness meditation, how to do, how it helps us. So I have a few slides. I'll quickly go through that. Why meditate? And so the main thing that happens from meditation is, instead of being identified with our thoughts, we begin to see them come and go. We develop a kind of a distance from our thoughts. Thoughts come and go just like a movie screen. And we get identified with our thoughts. It can be scary. And we think something bad happens, the world will comes to an end. We can think like this, but it will also pass. So if you observe your thoughts, you get more clarity and more peace, and you
witnessed it, yeah.
Yeah.
I have experience about when my attention going to my thought is like vanish.
Yes.
I don't. It's like everything is okay. Whenever I move my attention, the object and subject is like vanishing. I don't have any thought, but
You're
it's
right.
interesting for me.
You're right, because when if you want to get rid of thoughts, sometimes you make up your mind. I want to think a thought. Nothing will come to your mind. So thoughts come on its own, and then go. But the problem is, you're saying, you have figured out how to, get rid of thought. Most people have problem because they're stuck with a particular thought, that is not beneficial. And so for them, meditation is a way to kind of realize that it's just a thought.
Especially in the meditation,
Yeah.
when I attention to my thought, it just vanish and and continue my.
Okay, so we'll end it there.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Done?
Any other questions, ask in Zoom, any other questions from Zoom?
If there are any questions on Zoom, please feel free to ask. And now we can have a maybe 5-10 minute discussion. Yeah, even here, audiences can ask question. Hope you got something out of that, at least a curiosity. And there's so much material, on YouTube and books these days, that people are coming to this. In my opinion, this is the only way forward for our for our earth. Until people realize that, we'll keep fighting, and disasters and all these things will happen. But this is one way to kind of realize our true nature. And then, if you and I are everybody sharing this same field, then we don't, begin to think, somebody is external coming and harming us and things like that. Think negative of people who look different, dress different, have a different religion.
Yeah.
We are ultimately, we are all sharing the same universal field consciousness. Yes, please.
Yes, so you are saying that everything is like one single consciousness, right?
Mhm.
Or using your dream analogy, right?
Right.
It is God's dream.
Right.
Okay, if we just assume that, then whether there is a war between, say, Russia on Ukraine, or whether there is a war or not, it doesn't matter, because in the dream what happens, it doesn't matter, right? So why should we worry about that? So in God's dream it is happening.
Yeah.
Say maybe I'm hugging with you, but I'm fighting with you. It doesn't matter if so then everything becomes like, okay, there is nothing to do. Then but you say that no, we should have peace, we should not have war.
Right.
But how do you bring the importance of the peace if we think that everything is God's dream? You got my question, right?
I know what you're saying, and in this question,
Good
people
question.
answer. I don't know. I have the the really great answer that other teachers can give. Ultimately, it is fine. Whatever happens will happen. It's not like in this analogy, it's not like God is asking letting people do these things. God has nothing to do with it. He's created us. He's given us all the tools. It's for us to figure out whether we want to live peacefully or we want to fight. So that evolution of consciousness, ultimately he knows, everything will work out. But
Can you repeat the question, please? I mean, I missed the question.
yeah,
I think there is a war in Ukraine. Should we worry about the war in Ukraine, or say everything is not real and don't worry about war in Ukraine? That is the question.
Okay.
Yeah. So to answer that, what I was trying, God has given us the intellect, the knowledge to do the right things. But God will not tell us you have to do this. And then the purpose of the universe creation is for evolution. That is important. If God says God dictates everything, then what are we doing here? So there's the purpose of creation itself, will be thwarted if God dictates everything and we just follow along. So He has given us the freedom. He's given us the memory, the intellect, and all these things. So it is for us to do the right thing and figure out what is right and what is wrong. So that's my kind of simple.
Universal, there are different levels of answer. Universal field always is loving. I think universal field doesn't do wars. But I know Dvaita talks about Vyavaharika, there are different levels of reality. There is another level of reality, the practical world. I think it's also real. It's not as real as absolute reality. But there is, when we are existing in this world, there's reality. So because, as you said, you can't step in front of a bus. So that the bus is not real. So who's going to...
So that is common sense.
So some level of reality, there may be multiple levels of reality also that some of the philosophy is positive.
Right.
So that may be one way to see that. Dr. Shiva, you want to have any thoughts?
This is a very good presentation. Thank you so much. It's always a concept that we are trying to understand. And so many of your questions were very appropriate, in terms of to try to get that understanding, to this. We had arranged for a lecture by Professor Amit Ghosh.
Oh, yeah.
He's from San Francisco. We invited him to the temple, and so he gave a couple of days lectures about, he himself is a quantum physicist and also a philosopher. And, explaining in terms of all this aspect that you're mentioning. And the another way to think about the question that you had asked, if, bear with me, this may not be the right way, but something to think about that is if more people start to meditate, more people feel, that means I'm talking in terms of the populace, in a population, there is enough from the universal conscious field created, energies, vibrations, or what you will call, would help those warring factions.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, the in Ukraine and Russia, that will have an effect on their consciousness. They may not even realize, but it is coming from the world of consciousness that comes. That's why the more people meditate and think about, in terms of that, there is a possibility of how it is done, even though the reality or not reality, something is always a puzzle, that you have to think about it. And you say, hey, this is not real, so why bother? Let me just take. And I think that's understandable, one way to look at it. The other way is, maybe it will have an effect. In addition to my being in my awareness, it may have an effect, in terms of the others. I mean, that's one way of thinking.
Heartfulness, we call it egregore. There's French term called egregore, the overall consciousness.
Yes.
More people meditate, the overall consciousness will
Exactly.
raise.
The whole thing will, in terms of it, to cause that.
Yeah, so I have a question rather connected to this. We have heard like YouTube, right? World of YouTube. We have heard a lot about ascension or evolution of Earth, of Gaia itself, right? Like new Earth, maybe progressive, maybe more peaceful, egalitarian Earth. Is that like brother was saying that if everybody meditates, can we? Can we help in the progress of the earth, or it's a different concept in your view?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think we are all saying the same thing. I think if we raise our consciousness, and consciousness is love, so the awareness itself will bring forth a transformation in public, one person at a time, perhaps. It may take eons, but ultimately that is that's what happens. I think that's what masters have said, and there are so many traditions.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah. Even Gandhiji said, so we have to change one person at a time. Yeah, we cannot expect the universe to change instantly. It has taken hundreds and thousands of years to get to this stage, and so we cannot expect. But like brother said, and many masters have said, if at least 10% of the population of the earth starts to meditate, there will be an impact. So maybe that's that's a positive message to take from this.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
It's going to be very stupid. I just learned those words and watch a little bit. In regard of the relationship between quantum physics and string theory, maybe that is that word of us,
right.
The war happening in between Ukraine and
Yes.
maybe in another reality doesn't happen, right?
Right.
Does it make an,
Yeah.
I'm off.
No, I know what you're talking about. What is
Multiverse.
multiverse.
Yes.
But I think some of these people, at least, they discount that that is not how it should be interpreted. In fact, John Hagelin, the last slide I presented, where he talked about the connection between the unified field. He's actually a pioneer in string theory. He has published many string theory.
Really?
Yeah, string theory is not yet proven. It's kind of a theory, it's still theory, but it produced some results, but not everybody accepts string theory. So there are various debates happening in the physics community whether it's valid or not. So it's
The strange thing about the string theory, I saw it when I was little. I saw it.
wow.
And then in my dreams, and then later on, I experienced that again in the dream, like somebody was teaching me, showed me.
Yeah.
So I just want to know if they go
I
parallel.
don't think I'm qualified enough to answer that.
But possibilities are there.
Yeah.
But you have to experience it.
Yeah, okay.
But you cannot ask someone to explain because unless you can talk of something about the taste.
Mhm.
So unless I taste, even if you give me a 1 hour lecture, I can't.
Right.
True. Yeah. Very
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
We'll
everybody.
end it there.
Thank you, everybody from Zoom. Thank you, everybody from Zoom. Thank you for participating. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
How many people on this?
but 15 people were, let's say 17. So if you have any questions, I'll put his email address. You can contact him offline.
Well, then may I ask you to have a seminar with us in regard of ethics?
Satyas Murthy.
I should be qualified to be able to.
Satyas S. Murthy.
We can have
Oh, you go
conversation.
for the
Yeah,
meeting.
the seminar.
You can share your.
Oh. With you.
Turn on the camera. Oh, thank you. My daughter.
That's great.